Welcome to another edition of the Houston Roundball Review presents Folks Talking Sports. I'm one of the three hosts, Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. Just got word that one of the trio, Willy Gibson's having some technical difficulties, so he'll join us shortly. Right now, joining me is Andy Yanez, the youngster of the group, from the Community Impact newspaper, Pawd, Slama, Jama. What else you doing, man? You're a man about town, covering everything sports. How you doing, first of all?
Athletics. I'm doing great. Kris, how are you?
I'm doing great. In addition to Willy Gibson joining us, we should have a special guest shortly joining us to discuss some big news that Andy and I are going to talk about right off the top. And in about 20, 30 minutes, he's become a regular on the show. James Mueller, the sports editor from the Daily Cougar, will chime in to talk about this big news, as well as touch on recapping UVate's football's big win over Rice, and previewing UVate's Saturday game against Grambling State. But Andy, let me see. How should I phrase it? First off, about 5 o'clock, 2 hours ago, Terence Arsenault from Beaumont United State Champs announced via social media his college decision. He is going to, do we still say it, continue his education, his college education at the University of Houston. He is going to also play basketball for Coach Kelvin Sampson and the Coogs men's basketball program. He is, I think I just read in The Athletic, Houston's highest ranked recruit since 2012. Depending on the recruiting service you use, his stellar summer performances vaulted him up as high as, I think, 37 spots to anywhere between 30 and 40 in national rankings. 6'6", 6'7", do everything kind of player. He's a combo guard, and I'm going to mention this because before our guest chimes in, and then let you have it, give your thoughts. From our guest, forthcoming, I think he's a multi-dimensional player who provides skill, length, and athleticism. I think defensively, he's a difference maker because he can defend multiple positions. That sounds like a Kelvin Sampson kind of player. What are your thoughts on this big news?
A big get for Houston. Like I didn't know what you just said, that it's the highest recruit since 2012, which is obviously just a big tell of where the program is right now. And yeah, I think it was Joseph Duarte from the Chronicle that, I don't know if he got to speak with him early on or something, but he said that one of the factors that played into his decision making was the announcement that Houston had joined the Big 12. So I mean, already, like, it's barely been a week that Houston haven't even joined yet. It's just the announcement, and it's already paying dividends. But I think when it comes to with Arsenault, it kind of seemed like he was leaning towards picking Houston, at least throughout the summer. And like you mentioned, he was able to put together solid performances this past few months. It's kind of catapulted him up the national rankings when it comes to high school players. Obviously, when it comes to Houston or Kelvin Sampson specifically, he says he doesn't pay too much attention to that, but obviously it's still, certainly from a fan base perspective, that's something that a lot of UH fans are excited about, just in terms of, like you mentioned, it's one of the highest recruits that they're going to have once he does eventually join the program, and the second 4-star recruit of the class, right off the bat.
Emmanuel Sharp is the other, and I think Dayon Dunlap spoke with Emmanuel almost 2 months ago now for a Pawd and Jama podcast. Yeah. But I'm going to pull up this article from written by Brandon Jenkins from 27sports.com, interviewed Terence Arsenault. I was hoping to have some comments from folks I know in and around the Houston area with their thoughts on what this means for UVates, and as well as their thoughts on Terence's skill set tonight or tomorrow. And I'm going to plug real quick. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., I should be doing a live stream with Jim Hicks, Mr. Greater Houston boys basketball, high school basketball, He's been doing this a long time, almost probably as long as you've been alive, Andy. So to get his thoughts on Terence Arsenault, according to Hicks, RCSSports.com rankings, Terence is the number 1 ranked player in Greater Houston. So Hicks includes Beaumont. Hicks and I are also members of the Guy V. Lewis Award Committee. One of the criteria on the committee is counties touching / adjacent to Harris County. Beaumont does not fall into that criteria. So as a result of that, Terence is not eligible for the award. So for any of those people hating, because the last few winners, Ramon Walker and Tremont Mark, both winners of the Guy V. Lewis Award, both committed to U of H. Terence Arsenault is a Houston Git, but he'll end that streak because he's not eligible for the Guy V. Lewis Award. But some quotes from Terence Arsenault via Brandon Jenkins at 247.com, 247sports.com. I love the things Coach Sampson told me. He told me he can do a lot of things that can help me get to the league. He said they see me as a type of player who could potentially go one and done. End quote.
Wow.
So another quote, the staff has always been great to me. Coach Kellen is like an older brother to me. We have a great relationship that's going on for years. The winning culture and the staff getting a few players from the wing to the league recently were things that really stood out to me. I am going to the college as a wing, so felt that the school was a great fit for me. So you got Emmanuel Sharp, Terence Arsenault. Next up is 5-star big man Jarris Walker, who is scheduled to have an official visit to U of H sometime next month. Also on his final list of schools is Alabama, Auburn, LSU, and Texas for Jarris Walker. U of H for Terence Arsenault beat out UNLV, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M. So yes, this is big time get. Andy, I think I mentioned to you in July that all signs pointed to Terence Arsenault coming to U of H, right?
You did.
Oh, man, the last week or so, I got alums hit me up on phone messengers. Yo, man, I see he's making these visits, man. He had UNLV. He was there last week, over the weekend. Texas A&M was at his house, man. I'm worried, man. I made a mistake going to a message board. I saw that negativity, or from U of H, as part of our bloodline, pessimism, got me wavering. I'm like, July, Terence is coming to U of H. So yesterday, I reached out to 5 people I trust. All 5. He's going to U of H. I was like, all right, it's good enough for me. So I was just waiting for him to make the announcement today. I thought, as a youngster, he was going to have a press conference, be fancy and things like that. Nope. I called colleagues in media, local TV stations. Nope, no press conference. So just a question of waiting on when it's going to be. 5 p.m. He put out there Instagram and Twitter, committed, 100% committed to U of H.
120%.
120%.
What his mom said.
120% committed to U of H. So I'm happy for him, the Coogs. Kudos to Kelvin Sampson, because I think Terence was one of his main targets in recruiting process. And as a quote from Terence to Brandon Jenkins, Kelvin and Terence know each other for a long time. So I think kudos to Kelvin for getting this done. Yeah, man, let's just dive into what you touched on, what this means for U of H recruiting in Big 12.
Yeah, I think I made this comment a while ago where, honestly, this new Big 12 could, I keep saying arguably, I think it might be, it's going to be up there when it comes to the best basketball conferences in the entire country when you look at top to bottom. Obviously, I mean, they have the reigning defending national champions. They have U of H, who was in the Final Four. They have a when you look from top to bottom, all these schools, the Texas Techs, the TCUs, even the Oklahoma States, like they have a lot of named programs that have been good the last couple of years, and just immediately off the bat, like I mentioned, where he mentions it, and Hewitt is only technically, and not even technically, but it's announced that they're going to be in the Big 12 for a week, and there's already players explicitly saying that. And then it goes back to, I think, I'm not sure if we brought it up on air or something that Ron Huey told one of the local stations, where he said even he, with the UH women's basketball side, he had a couple of people reach out to him who didn't give UH much attention because they weren't a part of one of those Power 5 conferences. Once that announcement came out that UH was going to be joining the Big 12 as soon as possibly 2023, Huey said that he had a couple of players reach out to him again, said, "Are you guys still interested?" And even this past week during a media availability with football defensive coordinator Doug Belk and a couple of players too, Manny Nunnery, he's one of the linebackers for UH, he said the same thing, where especially when it comes to Houston and Texas, when you look at it from a state perspective, it's filled with talent, both in basketball and obviously with football in Texas. That's like king here in the state of Texas. And, you know, when you look at Houston, they're in a position where obviously one of the biggest cities in the entire country, a lot of homegrown talent that Manny Nunnery said he knows a lot of players that would love to stay local, but Houston not being on a Power 5 conference was a bit of a detriment to them, and now they don't have that going against them anymore.
Agreed. But however, to that, if the quote from Terence to Brandon Jenkins is correct, it's accurate, which I don't have reason to doubt. If Terence is a one and done, Andy, he's a U of H for the 2022-23 season. U of H won't be in the Big 12. You know,
yeah.
U of H right now is on, you know, in the works to be joining the Big 12 for the 2023-24 season. So if he's one and done, that'll still be part of the American, unless
something
changes and U of H and the American Athletic Conference reach a negotiation and on the buyout and more money spent for U of H to leave after this year. I think BYU is leaving the West Coast Conference after this year. At Cincinnati's press conference, it was discussed. Possibility, let's put it out there. I think UCF, U of H, and Cincinnati may look at it, the possibilities of leaving after this season, but it's going to cost more money. So never say never, you know, don't hold me to that. But indeed, if U of H does not join until the fall of 2023, and if Terence Arsenault is good enough to leave after his freshman year, he won't be going. He won't be going to the Big 12. So it's just when you get better players, the possibilities of going pro exist. And here is the special guest joining, Big Sloan. I'm coming to you, man. Hope you're ready to talk, share some insight. Marcus Sloan was joining us. What's up, brother?
How you guys doing?
Doing great, good, man. Thank you for joining us on Folks Talking Sports on short notice, because this, you know,
no problem.
Terence Arsenault made it official about 2 hours ago, and I reached out to you and asked if you could make it. You said, yeah. Okay. For folks who haven't seen Terence Arsenault, tell me about him. What do you think about him? Give me your thoughts on his skill set.
Terence Arsenault is an incredible basketball player from Beaumont United High School. Extremely gifted, very athletic, 6'7", long arms, can defend multiple positions, can play multiple positions offensively. He hit two of the biggest shots in Texas State basketball high school. Against state championship ever last season with Beaumont United. He hit two of the biggest shots ever against Dallas Kimball. The first three to send it into overtime, the second three to win it. Again, Kelvin Sampson, I think, got one of the top 30 players in the country. He can shoot the three. He can put the ball on the deck. He can make reads. He can play out of ball screens. He can post up. He's a defensive dynamo. He can guard 1 through 5 at the high school level. I see this being a great fit for both parties, for U of H and for Terence Arsenault.
Now you played pro ball overseas, so you know the pro game. Do you
Correct.
think is it possible for Terence Arsenault to be a one and done? Is he that talented?
He is that talented. I think for him to be a one and done, strength wise, I think he may have to improve a little bit. He's probably at about 190 pounds. I think guys at his position at the NBA maybe are 215, 210, 220. If he can get stronger and with the system that Coach Sampson has at U of H, with the success he's had, with the guys he now has in the NBA, I think he can be an outside possibility. I think he can come. He's going to come in and be a difference maker, be an impact freshman, just because of his versatility. So I think he can have an outside shot at possibly being a one and done. I do really believe that.
Now, do you think, and Andy, if you have questions for Marcus, chime in as well. I just lost my train of thought. So let me get back to it. Well, I'm gonna make a dig at you, Marcus. Since you went to TCU, I'm not gonna hold that against you because you're on with two U of H alums. But what do you?
Listen,
what do you think?
for the record, I did want to go to U of H in high school for sure. I actually
remember
committed to U of H as a high school junior when Clyde Drexel was there, and then he resigned, and so I had to open up my recruitment. So I definitely have an affinity for the University of Houston for sure.
What do you think it means, in your opinion? What does it mean for U of H to join the Big 12?
I mean, it's an incredible opportunity. I was talking to assistant coach Kelvin Sampson about it last week when the announcement came out, and he made a great point. They were already recruiting on a Big 12 level anyway, Chris, with the kids they had been getting in the last 3 or 4 years, with Quentin Grimes actually coming from a Big 12 school. The way that the basketball program has been recruiting and the way they are recruiting, it's on the Big 12 level anyway. For the athletic department as a whole, I think obviously it's a great move. It definitely helps football. It helps the women's sports. I think it changes the game and the landscape as a whole athletically for U of H. But for the basketball program, I think they just keep doing what they're doing. Last year they played what we would call a national schedule. This year they're playing a national schedule, playing Virginia, playing the Maui Invitational, and some of their non-conference games, and even the AAC conference. I mean, you got Memphis, Wichita State, SMU. These are all perennial top 25 programs. So the Big 12 will only enhance their recruiting for the basketball program.
Since you mentioned committing to U of H out of high school, facility-wise, when you were in high school, compared to now, describe the difference.
Night and day. So, for me, my mom's a history buff, and so am I. So just for me, the opportunity to play in an arena like Hofheinz Pavilion with so much tradition, so much history was a draw for me, actually. But nowadays, with these kids want state-of-the-art facilities. And so when I was in high school, they had Hofheinz Pavilion, and the locker room was downstairs, Chris, in Hofheinz, kind of in the doldrums in the basement. But now, man, the Fertitta Center is state-of-the-art, top of the line. Their practice facility is top of the line. It's already on the same level as the Big 12, if not better than some of the schools in the Big 12. So I think those facilities, with the direction that they were going, it's a no-brainer.
And you got anything to ask Marcus Sloan?
Yeah, I was going to go back to, you mentioned, you kind of listed off the kind of the strengths that Arsenault has, but I'm curious from the perspective of Houston, what do you feel like he'll benefit the most from just being under Kelvin Sampson in his program?
I think him learning defensively, what it takes to play at the next level. Obviously, Coach Sampson does a great job defensively. I think even offensively, the freedom that Coach Sampson gives his guys will help benefit Terence in a major way. And just him being on a college campus, being around a college-level weight, strength, and conditioning program will only enhance his game. And obviously, him not being that far from home, you have the new NIL, which comes into play with him being in Beaumont, being close, and being a state champion, and just his parents still being able to touch him. I also think that will play a major factor in U of H being a good decision for him.
Tell folks what you do now, man. That you're playing, your pro playing days are done.
Now I run a scouting service, a Texas-based scouting service, OTR Exposure. We also do events, tournaments, and camps. I also father and a husband, but I'm just an advocate of the game, and I'm an advocate of kids using the game of basketball to better themselves and better their community.
How many games do you watch? How do you acquire the info on the players for your scouting service? How do you do all that?
Just obviously some of my with my own events I have during this high school season and during the spring and summer ball season, watching kids and even watching kids from an early age from my fall leagues that start in September where they're in the 5th and 6th, 7th grade. So I have a database of kids from seeing them when they were in 6th grade and 7th grade. And I saw Terence Arsenault when he was playing for Omar Sneed and Curtis Basin in their Beaumont-based SBG team when he was in the 8th grade. And they told me back then, hey, this kid might have a chance if he keeps developing and he keeps growing. And just working with guys like Ben Perkins got him better, and even playing with local teams like the Houston Flight during last summer of the pandemic, you can see the growth in Terence's game. So I've probably seen Terence Arsenault play probably 80 times in his career, honestly. So just like I said, from my own events, going to other people's events, I see these kids a ton.
Plug your website, man.
My website is www.otrexposure.com. That's otrexposure.com. And we also have a big high school fall event, a fall shootout next weekend at C.E. King High School. We have about 60 teams, and some of the better teams in the greater Houston area will be there. Guys like Cam Ambery at Shadow Creek and Josiah McWright at South Falls High School. So I'm definitely excited to keep it going and look for the next talent here in the greater Houston area.
2 more questions for you. Well, maybe 2. Marcus, is there talent left at Beaumont United that you could see a pipeline beginning from there to U of H?
This is the talent down in that 409 Beaumont, what we call the Golden Triangle area, is unbelievable. They have a junior guard on their team, on the same high school team, Beaumont United, Wesley Yates. He's a top 40 player in America. We have him ranked 2nd in the greater Houston area. Some people have him ranked 1st. He's top 5 in the state of Texas. They also have 2 sophomores who started last year as freshmen, Cade Dotson and Clarence Paye, who are also top-level sophomores, both top 10 sophomores we have ranked on our website. So I was telling people earlier, Dallas Kimball will give them another formidable opponent, but Beaumont United can win back-to-back-to-back state championships, and it would not surprise me.
In your opinion, the last question for you, then let you go. In your opinion, what is it about U of H, the coaching staff, that they're doing to upgrade the talent?
I just think it's the culture, Chris. I think Kelvin Sampson and the staff, they have an identity that they have, and they have a vision that they want to execute. And I just think it's the culture. It's the development. They brought guys in the U of H who were 3-star guys, and the guys like Nate Hitton and guys like Armani Brooks, and they're now in the NBA. And then you take a guy like Quentin Grimes, who was a bounce back, what we call a transfer from Kansas. They develop him, get him better defensively, get him better at being comfortable being Quentin Grimes, and now he's a 1st-round pick. You got guys like Damian Dotson, who's also in the NBA. These guys, you have Tremont Mark and Marcus Sasser, who are NBA prospects. So I think for the University of Houston, it's their culture that they have. It's the mentality that Coach Sampson instills in the kids. And I think that we are starting to see that this is a powerhouse here in the country.
Marcus Sloan of OTR Exposure, thank you for taking time to join us on Folks Talking Sports. And I'm going to hit you up for my own solo live stream show throughout this season. Okay. So it's about your phone, brother. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, guys. See you, Andy. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thoughts on what Marcus Sloan said. And let me bring in the man who's been sitting in the studio. Get him on here. Thoughts on that? Because James, you could hear the conversation too, right? Couldn't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you first. Let our guest go, sir. Let our guest go since I bring him in. James, what are your thoughts on what you just heard?
I mean, what stood out to me was just like him going over all the talent that Beaumont United still has, going over that it's more than just one guy, and listing out, and how he thinks they can win multiple state championships in a row. I think that speaks to the talent level. And I loved your question about developing that pipeline, because especially now with the UH program on the rise under Kelvin Sampson and now being in the Big 12, I can definitely see something like that happening. And so it's great to hear from a guy like Marcus who does this for a living. He watches these players. He and really gets to see their true talent. So I thought that was like really interesting and stood out to me.
Andy?
Yeah, I was gonna say just that last question when you asked them about what is it about UH's that they've been able to build, and of course, the first word he had to say culture, and that's the word that Houston, at least for the men's basketball program, gets thrown around everywhere. I mean, what you mentioned, I think you said that the student athletes kind of sound like robots or zombies, because every time you ask them a question about the program, what's the number one word they're gonna say? Culture. Culture. The coaches, Kelvin Sampson repeats it nonstop. And I mean, it's interesting from an outside perspective, someone that covers high school teams and has all these prospects. What's the first word he says? Culture. So it's just a testament to the turnaround in the program that Kelvin Sampson has been able to build, because it's just that, like he mentioned, yeah, they're joining the Big 12, but Houston, from the men's basketball perspective, has been recruiting at that level for the last couple of years. And like you mentioned, I think Kelvin Sampson said this when last week, whenever they were introducing a part of the Big 12 news conferences, that's you can't just flip the switch. This is something that they've been doing for a while now. Now that they officially will be in the Big 12, it's good to finally be recognized, but it isn't something that they started doing overnight.
And it is ironic that, and I guess for a lack of a better word, Marcus Sloan, an outsider to the program, the scouting service, uses the word culture. I mean,
yeah.
But he is one of the people I lean on regarding high school hoops, because years ago, I kind of stuck my toe in that. That's just not for me. It's just way too much for me to do a great job doing it. But he's one of the people that I lean on for input. And to hear him say the word culture, just congratulations to the coaching staff at U of H. It's part of us. I mean, I catch us sometimes, when we talk about the program, using the word, doing interviews or guest spots or other places. Well, U of H has this great culture they've established. I mean, so
it brainwashes you, man. Like it convinces you to do it. But I mean, even then, that's absolutely right. Because I'm thinking back to the podcast episode we did this past week talking about something completely different. And then the first thing I told Dayan was like, this reminds me a little bit about the men's side and the culture they built. Like it's just a part of the way that they run things. And like I said, it's a testament to the program, the turnaround that they've been able to do with that program.
James Mueller, you were at Rice Stadium last Saturday, right, sir?
Yes, I was there.
Were you surprised at Houston's large margin of victory?
No, I mean, I predicted them to win by double digits. I didn't think they would hold Rice to just 7 points. I didn't think it would be that large, but I expected them to win by 17, I think was what I predicted. And I mean, credit to Houston, and Clayton Tune came back, had a good bounce back game. Defense was able to create turnovers. So I was expecting, them to win by a decent margin, but not that dominant.
I was surprised, and to get your thoughts on this as well. I was surprised because the way Rice played against Arkansas the previous week, I thought Rice would look better than they did against U of H. But I'm still not convinced, U of H, I mean, okay, they beat Rice. Okay, and tomorrow they're going to play Grambling. Yeah, whatever. But Andy, were you surprised at the outcome, the performance of both teams, U of H and Rice?
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily surprised with the outcome. Similar to James, I expected UH to win and to win by double digits, although but the amount of margin of victory that it was, I was shocked just by how dominant the defense was. I mean, really, they didn't allow Rice to do much of anything. They held the quarterback. They forced him to throw 3 turnovers to 3 interceptions. They held them to, I think it was just like 86 passing yards, and really they made them one-dimensional all night, and Rice just couldn't do anything. Like James said, it was a good bounce-back game for Clayton Tune and the rest of the offense. They show a lot more of the versatility that Dana Holgorsen had been touching about during training camp, but they still showed that they're far from a perfect unit just in terms of that second quarter. I don't remember the correct number. I think they only had 3 total yards of offense in that second quarter, and I think they only ran like 10 plays for the whole period. And Dana Holgorsen talked about, that's something that they need to polish up, and really he put a lot of the blame on the O-line, and I know that was another group that was a point of emphasis that we talked about. And James, I think you brought up how Holgorsen said that kind of the conditioning week 1 was an issue for them. So it looks like they're still trying to work out some kinks, but surprised by how dominating in ones, not as surprised that they were able to win and get their first win of the season.
Let's shift gears. We're not going to spend too much time on tomorrow's game because it shouldn't be close. But
great.
Houston versus Grambling, James, it's 6 p.m. kickoff?
Yeah, 6.
On ESPN Plus or 3?
Yes, it's ESPN Plus.
Okay. What do you expect? Well, first, have you heard how ticket sales are going?
I have not heard the exact number. I know today U of H just released something saying that, anyone from Louisiana affected by Hurricane Ida would be able to claim, a free ticket. And I know it's the big 75th, anniversary celebration. So I don't expect the turnout to be huge because it's Grambling, but I expect probably like 25,000, 30,000 maybe would be my estimate, but I have not heard an exact number.
I'm hoping, I don't know. Because of how Louisiana has been impacted by Hurricane Ida and now Tropical Storm / Hurricane Nicholas and rain. I'm not sure how many people from Grambling, Louisiana will be able to make it to the game. I know some alums will be there from here at TDECU Stadium, but Andy, what do you think? Give me a score. Both y'all give me a score, and then I want to get y'all's thoughts on Rocket News.
Yeah, after the dominating performance they were able to do against Rice, I expect it to be a similar outcome. Honestly, it should be. Grambling's coming off a really terrible performance against Southern Miss where they got shut out. And really, if you look at the stats, it was really terrible across the board. Houston should do a similar performance. I won't necessarily go out on limb and say they need to shut them out, but I'll say Houston wins 37-10 in that ballpark. Now, I know Dana Holgorsen on Monday he said that Clayton Tune was feeling better after he kind of got dinged up a little bit in terms of it kind of looked like a hamstring from our perspective, but James, you can correct me. I don't think UH ever mentioned specifically what was ailing him, and I know that Clayton Tune had treatment like right after the game, but I believe Dana Holgorsen said he is good, but that might be something to watch.
Yeah, James, what have you heard? Is Clayton Tune, I guess, we'll say hamstring, his injury, because we're not really sure if it never was announced officially. Is he good to go for tomorrow?
Yeah, everything I've heard, the latest thing that Dana said, like Andy touched on, Clayton was a little dinged up, but as of Monday, he was, feeling better, and he expected him to be a full go tomorrow against Grambling.
Do either one of y'all think backup quarterback will get time tomorrow?
I don't think Clayton Tune's going to play more than the first half. I think they're going to be up so much that they're going to give Ike, more chance to settle in.
And give me your predictions on give me a score.
52-3.
Yeah, Andy, 37-10. 37. That's kind of low.
I'm being generous. I'll do it because the offense has shown kind of problems, but yeah, they got shut out against Southern Miss and it wasn't lopsided. So I guess I am being generous to Grambling, but I'd agree with James in terms of I don't know if it's like first half only, especially when you factor in the injury, but I would expect Ike Agbagu to get a good amount of snaps and good amount of minutes in tomorrow's game as well.
Okay, they're playing Grambling, mass Grambling. U of H to be 2-1. What are we going to take from that? The 2-1 start. What do you take from it, Andy?
I think the biggest the takeaways would be on the defensive side if they're able to put together another dominating performance. Now, obviously, you kind of have to you look at who they're playing, but I know against Texas Tech, that was the one unit that, for the most part, were able to put together a solid performance until the very end. They kind of let go of the rope, but I think that's really the biggest thing you could take away, especially if they can put together another dominant performance, and even a little bit on the offenses. Really, they can finally put together a consistent 4 quarters of not having any cold stretches. Like I mentioned, they had it in the second quarter against Rice. Grambling is probably they should be lower tier than Rice, so Houston shouldn't have problems scoring the ball and going on long drives. So that could be a takeaway. But I mean, it'll be a step up against Navy the following week when they start their conference play. But they should be favored in that game as well too once they kick off their conference action.
Well, okay, James, what are your takeaway from these after tomorrow's win?
Yeah, I mean, I think Andy hit on the point with defense. If they're able to, put up another strong performance, you can definitely see some improvement there. Obviously, you got to take these games against Rice and Grambling with a grain of salt, just because the competition's not at the same level as other schools. I think the big thing for me is looking how they come out in this first drive, because last year, I forget, they scored 30 first quarter total points. I think they might have had one first like opening drive of the game where they scored a touchdown. This year they're 2 for 2. I'm looking to see, are they able to continue that fast start, because these fast starts will be important coming into conference play when they're playing a little bit of higher level competition. So that's like one of the big things I'm looking for. And then along with Alton really broke out. Alton McCaskill, the freshman running back against Rice, and I've heard great things about him from some of his teammates and stuff. They've really been hyping him up and being like, this kid can be special. So I'm just looking to see, is he able to put up another consistent performance, even though it is against a Grambling team that we don't expect much from? Is he able to put together back-to-back strong weeks and really establish himself as a focal point of the offense?
And Andy, you mentioned that the next opponent, Navy. Isn't Navy struggling too?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I mentioned they've really struggled. And I think, they got absolutely pummeled in their week 1 game against Marshall, and they only put up a field goal against Air Force. And I know they're kind of unique with their triple run option offense that UH was able to really shut down well last season. And this time they'll be playing at TDCU. So I'll add this tidbit, even though it is Grambling, if Houston wins tomorrow, it'll be the first time they win back-to-back games under Dana Holgorsen since he's been here in 2019. They haven't won back-to-back games, whether it was his first year or last year. So they might have a chance to go on a long winning streak. Not to get too far ahead, but that's something that Houston's playing for tomorrow, to get Dana Holgorsen his first back-to-back winning streak.
That says it all right there. They're 8-14 under Dana. Big Grambling will be 9-14, first 2-game winning streak. They should beat a struggling Navy team, so that's 3 in a row. We'll hold off on the Tulsa game because that's going to be a little bit different. But
even then, they've struggled too.
So, but I think their U of H's football is in line to go 3-1 like we predicted. They go 3-1. So, okay. I'm still not going to be that impressed. But anyway, Rockets. Get UT young men's thoughts on the news announced earlier this week about the Rockets and John Wall agreeing to sit John Wall, but pay John Wall to sit. Thoughts on that, James?
It's a sort of similar situation. I'm a OKC Thunder fan, and so last year they sort of did the same thing with Al Horford, although Al Horford did start, at the beginning of the season, got actual minutes. But then they sat and just had him, as a veteran presence, but then agreed to, work out a situation where he can go to a contending team, and, because they want to develop those young guys. So I see this as a similar situation. I think John Wall will be on the roster come, the start of the season, just because his contract's going to make it hard to trade. That's the biggest thing. But so I think, it's going to take some time to really find a deal where they can ship him somewhere and not have to take on a bunch of bad contracts in return. But I do think his presence can, be beneficial for some of the young guards, just having a guy who's been in the league, who's had success, just in your ear, and just walking by you as the season progresses, I think that can be a big benefit. And I don't know how long John Wall will continue to be on the Rockets, before they eventually ship him out somewhere. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just I like the move on the Rockets' part just to develop, your young guards and give them as much playing time and experience as they can get.
Andy, what are your thoughts on the agreement to part?
Yeah, I agree with all the points that James hit on, and especially when it comes to being able to do it in a mutual kind of agreement where it's not if you look at kind of what James Harden did last season, where it's kind of trying to force his way out. It's kind of both sides acknowledge that they're at different points. Houston like James said, trying to get a lot more experience with their young guys and build them up and kind of go that way, while John Wall kind of, starting to enter the tail end of his prime after the injuries that he's had, and just probably in a stage of his career where he's looking for being on a contending team and trying to be able to compete for a championship. So I think that's beneficial. Now, like James said, it'll be interesting to see how long John Wall's still on the roster and just not playing, because I'm not entirely sure what his market is right now.
I don't believe he has one, especially if he sits, because if he doesn't play, what is he showing teams who may have interest in him? They need to see if he's healthy. Kelly Eco with The Athletic had an article posted today about Eric Gordon, but within the article, it mentions John Wall on his knee. Okay, well, if he's getting treatment on his knee, he's not 100%. So if I'm a team, I take that into consideration, plus the huge contract. So far, a lot of folks around the league believe John Wall is going to be a Rocket almost the entire season, because unless the Rockets change their tune, what they're looking for in a trade, or John Wall agrees to a buyout, what team wants to give up assets for John Wall this season? Next season is last year's contract. Then folks will be like, well, we can get him, and then his contract will come off the books. That's different. This year, teams may just wait on the Rockets to say, okay, well, you do what you want to do. We're just going to wait and see how it all plays out.
Yeah, for sure. I could totally see it'll be interesting to kind of – it's such a weird time in Houston sports when you look at not to get ahead or switch to a different team, but, I mean, look what the Texans are doing with Deshaun Watson, and obviously a much different circumstance. But it'll be weird if John Wall stays on the roster the entire season and doesn't play a single minute. I'd be interested to see if he'd kind of get antsy if say you get to the trade deadline and there's not really a market for him, and he's like, you know what, I kind of want to play again. And I feel like the Rockets would be especially if it gets that far ahead, they'll be at a spot where, hey, we've had most of the season playing with Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., and barring any injuries, I'm sure Houston wouldn't want to have them have to take a step back or have to share the load. So, but the one thing about the NBA, it's especially the past few seasons, really, I wouldn't call any type of contract unmovable. And eventually there'll be one team out there, whether it's they have an injury or they feel like they one piece away, that'll probably end up doing an offer. But I agree with what you said, where the Rockets will probably have to end up kind of adjusting what they end up getting back in the trade, or what they have to give him. Maybe they have to send away one of their own first round picks or something like that in exchange to get him off the roster.
And James, as an OKC fan, could you see John Wall going to OKC for, I don't know, let's say a bag of Brocs, but the Rockets, OKC agreeing to waive John Wall, and then John Wall goes to a contending team after that way? Would OKC take on a contract for something in return?
Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me with Sam Presti, just what he's done. I mean, they did that with Kimba basically over the offseason. I don't know if he'd be willing to do like a big move like that twice in one season, but I wouldn't be surprised because, Presti has shown he's willing to do a lot of different things during his time with the Thunder.
And I see he's, I guess, overcome his technical difficulties, so we're going to bring in the third member of the major part of the show, Folks Talking Sports, Willy Gibson.
Ooh, I love Will.
We got to talk about what happened Saturday, brother.
Football.
Oh, yeah, I don't think you want to do that, but okay, we can do it.
I mean, because, Oregon got paid to go to Columbus, Ohio. Didn't it, Will?
No.
You sure? Because, I didn't know if it was accurate, but I thought I saw Oregon got some money to go to Ohio.
No. Wait, no, that's not a money game. That's not a guarantee game. That's
because of last season's game got canceled because of COVID.
Yeah.
And to get them to Ohio State, someone wrote that Ohio State paid Oregon some money to come up there, and it turns out, smack them around, Will.
Smack them around? Really? 35-28? Well, I'll say this. I'll say this. It happens a few times a decade. Ohio State loses a regular season game. 2, maybe 3 times a decade. But, got it out the system now. We're on the Tulsa.
Oregon snapped Ohio State's, 23 game home winning streak, something like that? 20 something.
Yeah, 23 in a row. Yep.
Were you surprised at Ohio State's struggles on defense?
No. I've talked about this since day one. And it's funny. I was thinking pre-game prior to the show how last week I think James and Andy mentioned the standard at Houston was 10-2, and here at Ohio State you lose one game and the defensive coordinator is looking for a job behind the scenes right now. It's all but a done deal. But no, the defense has been the problem since day one. Kerry Coombs is a great guy, phenomenal guy, phenomenal secondary coach, less than standard defensive coordinator. It is what it is. And Ryan Day, it kind of reared his head up a little bit last year, but due to COVID, truncated season, I think Ryan Day gave him a shot to come back, and it's clear after the first 2 games, it's just not there.
Okay, and thanks for Marty joining us. For folks tuning in right now, you missed out on the big news locally. Terence Arsenault committing to U of H men's basketball, a top 30, top 40 player in the country, committing to the Coogs. Reportedly, the top recruit to U of H since 2012. The Athletic reporting is accurate on that. Had guest Marcus Sloan giving his thoughts on what Arsenault's decision to the Coogs means, and talked about his work and what he's doing for recruiting, a scouting service, what U of H basketball is doing. Big Will, Andy, James, and I have talked about it. I want to get your thoughts on John Wall and the Rockets, man. What are they doing? And I'm gonna give you the screen, man. You got the whole screen to yourself, man.
Wow. What are they doing? Looking for a landing spot for John Wall. I mean, I'm done saying that no contract is untradeable, or a contract can't be traded. After 4 years in a row, Russ's $40 million plus contract has been traded. We saw James Harden's $40 million plus contract be traded. And not just for cap filler or a buyout option, as I heard OKC mentioned early on. Where he goes, I don't know. The Clippers, I've heard a 3-team trade between the Rockets, Cleveland, and Philadelphia allows Cleveland to free up a little Kevin Love, get that $60 million off of their cap. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. I don't foresee, knowing and hearing what you said about Tillman Fertitta, him just sitting out and collecting that $41.7 million or $40 million plus. I'm not sure the exact figure for next season, but it'll be interesting to see where he goes, and more importantly, what the Rockets get in return.
And I'm going to bring it back to the foursome. I'm learning how to do this production work with cameras, fellas. So watch out going forward. We're going to be doing big things throughout this season.
Absolutely.
Will.
Yes, sir.
If I'm an NBA team, not the Rockets, why make a trade? Why give the Rockets anything in return if I believe that John Wall it's inevitable that there's gonna be a buyout. I think it's inevitable. What team wants to trade for him because of that contract? 43 and change million this year and 47.4 next year. Who wants that?
You know what? Conventional wisdom would probably say no one, but there's always one. I mean, we know. I mean, general managers, front offices are arrogant. There's always somebody that's going to say, "Hey, we can, for lack of a better term, reclamation project. We can get John Wall back on track." And somebody else with a bad contract, like I said, Cleveland. Kevin Love's bad contract. Bad contract for bad contract. You free up. Maybe they get someone else as a third team that will give them pieces that they feel John Wall is a fit for them, like Philadelphia. Get Ben Simmons out of there and you bring in John Wall. I don't know, but it only takes one. It's 29 other teams in the league, so it only takes one. That's
true. That is the adage, and it has been proven the case time and time again. But let me shift gears.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be a while. John Wall's going to be here a while. But teams will change. Teams may get desperate. The guards may get injured. They just, whatever. They believe, like you touched on it, a change of scenery might be best for John Wall. And we can maximize his abilities with us. That could happen. But let's shift gears to Eric Gordon and Danuel House. How about trading both of them? I think that's more feasible than John Wall. What do you say, James?
I definitely agree. Eric Gordon, I mean, his big problem's been injuries, but if he's healthy, I know he's struggled shooting the past few years. His 3-point percentage hasn't been up to, his standards, but he's a solid defender. He can, do things with the ball. He can run an offense if needed. I think the big question with him is health, but I think there would be teams willing to take a chance on him. And then House, I mean, he's super athletic. He can do a little bit of everything. And I think I can see both Gordon and House getting shipped off a lot easier than Wall.
Well, what do you think? Could it be a package deal for Eric Gordon and House going somewhere to get something in return?
I think so. Honestly, I was surprised Danuel House came back last season after his transgressions in the bubble, if you will. So yeah, I definitely think that's a tradable asset. I heard we talked about it here pre-draft. Eric Gordon possibly back home to Indiana as a trade opportunity for the Rockets. So I think, and maybe I'm wrong, unless you guys can help me and probably know the situation better than I. Is Eric Gordon in a situation where he has to play himself into a trade because of the injuries that people need to see that he's consistently healthy before they trade for him?
In my opinion, probably so, because he missed most of this past season. And as James touched on, he does have a history of injuries. So it would help everybody involved for him to get some run in preseason and probably the first, let's say 15, 20 games in regular season to show team that he's healthy. Because I think he has, 3 years total left on his contract. And House, this is the last year of his deal. So his $3 million and change come off the cap, and a team would be good with that, taking him in a deal. But could you see a possibility, James, of Eric Gordon staying here through this season at least to provide veteran leadership? Because really, Who's the leader? Who the vets now? We got Eric Gordon, House, and DJ Augustine. Is that enough to guide these youngsters down that proper path?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I can see them, sticking with Gordon for another year. Like you hit on, he has 3 years, about $60 million owed. So he might be more tradable, a year later if he can prove, to be healthy. And then teams have less, they're only stuck with him for 2 years rather than, a full 3. And I think the Rockets definitely do need, some veteran. You can't just throw a bunch of young guys together, and you need that, veteran leadership. So I think he is a candidate for that. But I don't think they'll keep him around if the right deal comes along. I think they would be willing to part ways with him. But like you said, I agree that he's got to prove himself early in the season, and then we'll go from there.
And going to bring Andy Yanez back in. For the folks tuning in, watching us on YouTube, this is for everybody. What are your thoughts on, I think, Shams Charania Wednesday? I think. No, it was Tuesday, because it was right after I did my live show solo with the guests, with the YouTube family, give me comments and questions. I got a question during the show about Dante Exum. I said he's done. Well, Shams put out after 30 minutes after the show that the Rockets were working out, getting close to an agreement to bring Dante Exum back. Thoughts on that? I think right off the top, that'd be 21 people in training camp. The max is 20. So if the Rockets do reach an agreement with Dante Exum, somebody got to go on a trade. So it could be House. It could be somebody, maybe DJ Augustine. I don't know. But to bring him in, if Sam's reports are correct, bringing back Dante Exum could be another backup point guard. But thoughts on that, Andy?
Yeah, I'd have to agree in terms of it. Maybe it's a preceding move to a bigger trade or something like that. When you look at it on the surface, if there isn't another move that's made, it's a bit of a head scratcher if nothing else comes of it, just in terms of already, especially at that guard position, when you look at the amount of players that they have, not only on the roster, but even on the Exhibit 10 deals and all around, it would be weird to say the least that they just bring them back and stay put.
James, thoughts on Dante Exum?
I think the one benefit is, he's a younger guy. He's 26, I think. And so, you could be hoping to, revive someone who has, struggled to really translate his game to the NBA. And I know during the Olympics, he was catching some people's eyes for his play with Australia, but I don't see the move making 100% sense at all. Just because, like you said, it creates more problems with the roster. You're over the limit. And so, yeah, I don't see the move happening, but yeah.
It's strange. I think if he's healthy, he could be, I'm not even sure. I guess he could be a talent upgrade at the point. He's 6'5". He's a bigger point guard. He's taller point guard. DJ Augustine is a shorter point guard. I'm not sure where he'd fit in. I just personally think it's another example of Armani Brooks being stuck, being a limited roster spots for him on this team. I just think Armani needs to go somewhere else, a better spot for him. But what are your thoughts on that? What do you think Armani should do?
I mean, I can start. I forget when it was when Kelvin Sampson talked to the media after the draft with Dejan and Quentin. He mentioned, how he wants Armani to be in the best situation possible, and he didn't say it, outright, but he sort of hinted, while we love having him in Houston because he played at U of H and stuff. We want him to go to a situation where he's going to get to actually play. And I agree that I don't see a ton of that fitting in with the Rockets just because of all the other younger guys they have on the team, and just I don't see him, having the role he envisions and he feels like he deserves in Houston.
Andy, what are your thoughts on what Armani should do?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit a show or two ago. Might have been a couple of shows back. Whenever we honestly, when you look at and kind of going back to the Dante Exum thing, just in terms of how stacked they are, the Rockets roster is at that guard position, and it being another Exhibit 10 deal. I feel like, and Kris, I think you agree with this. It's going to be an uphill battle just to be on the roster once the regular season starts, just in terms of how much traffic there is in terms top to bottom on the roster. And yeah, like James said, it's kind of puzzling, might not be the right word, but maybe he chose to sign that Exhibit 10 with the Rockets. If that's the case, maybe there's not necessarily a larger market, which I'd be surprised at what he was able to show this past season. He obviously, the main thing he was known for is sharpshooting ability, but like we kind of mentioned, that what he really needs to round up is kind of build a little more physically and be a much more consistent defender. And he was able to show that not only is he a good shooter, but he occasionally can do a little bit more in terms of driving and creating his own shot. But I don't know. I'm curious to see why he did choose to re-sign with the Rockets.
I am too, and an Exhibit 10 deal. That's I guess in a sense lower on the level than a two-way contract. So I wish him the best of luck. I mean, he could go back to the G League, part of the Exhibit 10 parameters. If you're there a certain amount of time, you do receive $50,000. Part of the Exhibit 10, contract. But I just we got a question, and it's for everybody. Hope y'all are ready for this one. I'm gonna bring this one up because I think we can comment on this one, each of us. What's your opinion of Alperen Sengun? I'll go first, and I would like all three of y'all to chime in as well. I love him. I love his game. You got an old man game. I'm an old man. I like his low post ability. I like his passing skills. He's more athletic than we were led to believe. Defense needs work, but what young person coming to the league's defense doesn't need work? But I think he has a bright future with the Rockets and a bright future in the NBA. James, you next.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I love the fit in Houston. He was the Turkish League MVP. He clearly had success overseas. And in the preseason games, like you said, the biggest thing that stood out was his athleticism. He sort of caught people off guard with that. And he was able to be productive. And I think, I know I see a lot of people, joking around on Twitter, like photoshopping him in on the legends of the Rockets bigs and stuff. But I think he can be a really good piece for this Rockets team as he continues to mature and develop.
And real quick before I get Will and Andy's thoughts, look at that. Look at the comment. Love from Turkey.
Wow.
We're getting love from Turkey. See?
We say it all the time. We're global perspective.
That's right. Houston Roundball Review, local name, global perspective. Appreciate the love from Turkey. Keep tuning in because more content and shows are coming, especially as the NBA season ramps up. Will, what are your thoughts on young fella Alperen Sengun?
Yeah, well, what I saw of him in Summer League, I mean, he has it, the proverbial it. And the fit, I think, for this young team in Houston, the sky's the limit. As he said, the defense, that's going to come. What young player doesn't come in that has defensive challenges? But his game, his shot that I saw the game against Detroit. And I like this game a lot. So I think what he's going to do is continue to grow with Coach Silas and the staff. But I definitely think the future is bright.
Andy?
Yeah, I agree. You guys honestly have all hit it perfectly in terms of for the Summer League, you got to see a lot of the raw talent that he has. He certainly showed a lot of potential and honestly what he could be. He made a very great debut in that first Summer League game. Both he and Jalen Green did. And then when you look at the roster, obviously he's not necessarily a player where him and Christian Wood, it might be a conflict of having them play together. I think he's kind of a compliment to Christian Wood in terms of the style that both of them play. And then you look at, honestly, Daniel Theis is the only other big along with Christian Wood on the roster. So he certainly has a very good, you mentioned about how the guards and the wings, they're kind of karate good for the Rockets, but he's in that perfect category where he's not necessarily going to be in a crowded field and he'll have a lot of opportunity to develop, whether early on in the season, if it might be that they have to send him down to the G League, or I'd imagine once the season continues, especially what we saw last year, where if Christian Wood gets banged up or even Daniel Theis has injuries, you'll certainly get a lot of playing time throughout the season at the NBA level.
Yeah, of the two rookie bigs, Alpi Şengün, Alpi, that's what Rafael Stone calls him. I guess it's Alpi, nickname. Him and Usman Garuba, I think Garuba will spend more time in the G League than Şengün will, because I think Şengün's overall game is further along than Garuba's game. Garuba's defense, as a youngster, he loves playing defense, and he's very, very good at it right now. But his offensive game needs a whole lot of work. So, but I think the Rockets' young bigs go along with C. Wood, Daniel Theis will get playing time this season. Consistent time, probably the second half of the season. But I'm good with his potential. And I think Şengün, he's smart. He's got a high basketball IQ, and I think that will help him learn the defense quickly. And I'm just curious, with Barbara Turner, I guess, being on staff officially as coach/translator, will she go to G League if Şengün goes down to G League? With that, because I think Şengün knows some English, but I think the more English he learns, that'll help his adjustment to the NBA even quicker. Martin Moore, I see you from Acres Homes, man. I grew up over there, so props to you. Like I said, Houston Roundball View, global, man, global and local. It's all good. But this is good. And for folks tuning in, Tamer Knight, she was slated to join us, but she had a prior commitment that she had to take care of. So she will join us next Friday, I guess. We're good for next Friday again, guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Will, we talked about UVA versus Grambling. That should be a route tomorrow. Who does Oregon play next? Excuse me, Ohio State. I'm sorry. Who does Ohio State play next? Yeah.
Ohio State plays Tulsa tomorrow. Ohio State plays Tulsa at 3:30, 2:30 Central.
So Tulsa from the American Athletic Conference. What's the spread on that, Will?
Good question. Let's see. I haven't looked. Spreads, I don't really look, but let's see.
For these shows, I think we need to get into that. Just reach out to getting spreads, because we may get some more responses from bettors, folks who like that, angle of sports.
CBS Sports has it at 24.5.
24.5.
Yep, 24.5 is what I see.
I could see Ohio State winning by 28.
I can see Ohio State winning by 48 after last week.
Especially with Tulsa. Yeah. Tulsa struggled too.
Against who? They played Oklahoma kind of well.
Tulsa almost beat Minnesota 26-21.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
they lost to UC Davis week 1, which was like.
That's it. I'm thinking of Tulane. I think that's what it is. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. So scratch that 28. Yeah. I think, Will, you 48, 49, 50, you might be on the point then. So, yeah.
Yeah. Especially after last week.
Yep. And of course, it's going to be in Columbus. So, yeah, they got revenge on their minds. We are, 11 days or so from the start of NBA training camp. Start on September 28th. And 2 weeks from today will be the first day, I believe, of practice for UH men's basketball. So we'll talk about that in the coming weeks. We're going to wrap it up. Folks who are tuning in, yes, I will be attending the Big 12 Basketball Media Days next month. Men's and women's, got approved for that Wednesday, roughly about 5 minutes after I submitted my application. So good for that. Getting ready for the future when UVH joins the Big 12. So grateful for that opportunity. We're going to wrap it up. James, how can folks find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at JDM2186, and then all my work is on the dailycougar.com.
Andy, how can folks find you?
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter at Yanez_5. For UH Athletics, apollohou.com/Cougars. For community impact, if anyone's living in the Pearland Friendswood area and want to know more stuff about your guys' community, that's communityimpactnewspaper.com/Andy Yanez. Trying to get verified on Twitter, by the way. They denied me again because my Twitter account isn't linked to my community impact page, which ticked me off a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. And podcast, Stay on Dunlap, and I recently had our preview episode talking about UH Grambling, and also we talked about the impact that the Big 12 move will have on football recruiting specifically, because that's something that, like I mentioned, Doug and a couple of players touched on during their availability this week. So that came out today. And then, of course, tomorrow we'll have our coverage for UH Grambling. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Will, whenever I toss it over to you, I'm curious, what are your predictions for Houston, the Texans, and the Browns?
A lot to know. Yeah, I think the Browns, again, coming off that game in Kansas City, week 1, should have won that game. Still learning how to close. Odell Beckham is out again for week 2 against the Texans. Some people kind of viewed it as a slight to the Texans, that they announced on Wednesday that Odell wasn't playing, versus against Kansas City, you found out 90 minutes before the game. So they kind of little gamesmanship there with Andy Reid, but with Houston, it's kind of like, so what? Tell them Wednesday. I don't believe that, but that's kind of the word on these the Cleveland streets, is that they kind of have little regard for the Texans and expect to come in and for them to come here and leave with a massive L. But Tyrod Taylor, I mean, he was in Cleveland Baker's rookie year and was a phenomenal asset. Played the first 4 games, and then Baker took over week 5. And I wouldn't count him out. There's 7 former Browns on the Houston Texans roster. So people think that those guys are coming in with revenge on their minds. But all that being said, I think the Browns will win. I think that's a 12.5 point spread. And I think they win by more than that.
And how can folks find you on the World Wide Web?
Appreciate that. Will Gibson 7 on Twitter and Instagram. WTGsports.com as well. And Facebook, Will Knows podcast page.
And just before we wrap it up, I think in our future shows, when I go to my guests, with you guys, the panel to close out, I'm going to give y'all a solo screen. So y'all get the time to shine solo as you tell people how to find you. So I'm Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. Reminder, thank you for tuning in to Folks Talking Sports, but reminder, 9 a.m. Saturday morning, Central Time, 10 Eastern, I will do a live stream show, solo kind of, so YouTube family tune in, but I'm going to have a guest, Jim Hicks from RCS Sports. Cheat Sheet is his nickname. He is, my goodness, godfather, if not the man. It doesn't take long to call the roll of folks who know the ins and outs of high school basketball in greater Houston area. He'll be tuning in, joining me, agreed to join me. He's somewhere on a plane right now. He's going to join me tomorrow. Going to go live 9 a.m. Central Time on YouTube. So tune in for that. I'm Kris Gardner, Houston Roundball Review. Been around since 1994. HoustonRoundballReview.com. Houston Roundball Review on Instagram. You see scrolling across the screen there, the HR Review on Twitter. As we close it out, same
Kris,
time next week. Go ahead. What Andy? What you got?
One more thing before we close out. Actually, can we put the screen on me? I know you're learning how to.
You gonna go solo?
Right.
You wanna go solo?
Because I have a bold prediction. Will, you said that the Browns will win by more than the 12.5. I wish we needed some more productions. I guarantee the Texans will cover the spread. They'll cover the spread. That's all I'm saying. I won't pick them outright. I can't go that bold, but I think it'll be a closer game than expected. Obviously, Houston coming off a win against Jacksonville, which everyone's gonna say it. We talked about UH and Rice. And it's Rice, but I mean, Jacksonville was favored in that game, and they were favored by 3.5 points, and that game was in Houston. It was complete domination. Now, I don't expect Houston to have any of the flashy stuff. Like, you had Brandon Cooks making Randy Moss type of catches against the Jaguars. Obviously, against the Browns, that probably won't be the case. But I think it'll be a much closer game than 12.5. I'll leave it that.
Will?
Fair enough. Hey, listen.
No smack talk back. Come on, Will. Oh, and the screen.
He froze. Man.
Oh man.
Hey, it's a sign of things to come. You know what? Guarantee Texans cover this.
Yeah, I got to figure out, see if I can get an audio video file, guarantee something like that pop up.
Yeah.
So
that'd be perfect.
Work on that. If you find one, send it to me, and I'll add it, and we can just pull it up. So I'm learning how to do all these things on the streaming. So yeah.
I can do that. I can do that. I'll get it to you. Man, I feel even more confident now with Will freezing out. I might go pick the Texans outright.
All right, now. Okay, he said it, James. He said that. Okay, but this is fun. We're having fun here on Folks Talking Sports. Thank you to you guys for joining us. Thank you to people who gave us the comments. See you next Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Once again, James, that includes you, man. You're part of the family. Join us as the usual time. Who knows what'll happen next week? May get some big news on women's basketball committing to U of H. Who knows? I don't know. But whatever. We'll talk about U of H football, Grambling, then U of H Navy. I'll pull him up so I can close out with him.
He's back.
So Will, you got any smack talk? And he says it's going to be a win now. Texas is going to win the game. No,
I said that freeze right there. It's a sign of things to come. The Browns, they better not choke it now.
Stop it. Stop it. Andy, I love you to life. I do. I really do. However.
Okay. We'll see. Is it a noon kickoff?
It is. It's noon central. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Home opener for the Browns. First time with fans in the building, and they're gonna lose to Houston? No, I don't think so.
Okay, but
or not cover? Nah. 14 easy. 14 easy.
Oh, okay. We'll see.
We'll see.
And on that note, thank you everyone for tuning in to the Houston Roundball Review presents Folks Talking Sports. We'll see you next Friday. Everybody take care.